We are live.
We're
We
live.
are
Good.
live, Mr. Flagler.
Super. Can we continue our conversation about the Iris Caddis?
Well, let's start. Let's wait till people come on. Let's wait till we get some more people, and then we can continue it live because it won't take us that long to tie this one. It's not
I know,
difficult.
but I'm excited now.
You're excited now?
Yeah,
Really?
you got me all worked up about the Iris Caddis. I'm
Wow.
all aflutter.
I got it from the horse's mouth, so.
I know, and I haven't. I've gotten it third hand at best, so I'm probably completely wrong on the way I've been tying it, fishing it, and thinking what it represents.
Well, John recognizes that people tie it with lots of different materials, and that's fine, he says. And
which John are we talking about, Tom?
John Jurasek.
Just for the people who don't know.
Yeah, so the Iris Caddis is a pattern that I have seen attributed to Craig Matthews most places online of blue ribbon flies in West Yellowstone, and it's actually not Craig's fly. John and Craig collaborated on the Sparkle Dun and the X Caddis. Actually, Jackie Matthews, Craig's wife, also collaborated on the X Caddis. But this one is John's pattern, John's own pattern, not Craig Matthews, although Craig ties it and uses it. And John modeled it after some emerging caddis that he saw on the Madison and tied it. It's a simple fly, but it has a great profile from underneath. And John fishes it as a dry because it shows up quite well. Even though it floats low in the film, it shows up really well. You can see it. And but you can also fish this as an emerger. You can fish it sunk. You could even fish it with another weighted fly or a split shot and fish it deep. So there's all kinds of ways of fishing this pattern, but John, the originator, fishes it as a dry. And he says it's the only caddis imitation he uses.
Yeah, they're around here. I was saying that my buddy Matt Grobert, another New Jersey tyer and author, he's the one that turned me on to it about 10, 12 years ago. And he also, he's gotten a lot of other people from this area, who fish northwestern New Jersey, the South Branch of the Raritan, the Pequest, Pohat, Muskie, and things like that, using it. As their exclusive caddis pattern. But yeah. one of the things I don't know whether this was Matt's idea or where it came from, but there are caddis species that, as egg layers, they come back and they will actually, rather than just lay their eggs on the water surface, they'll swim down and deposit them either on the bottom or lower down on the water column just to increase the chances. And one of the ways that I fish it and people around here fish it is as an egg layer, as opposed to a pupa. So what you do is you float it dry, dead drift it. As it gets towards the end of the drift, you actually pull it under and make it dive underwater. And then it's so buoyant, it naturally comes back up to the surface. And a lot of times it's on its, you can pull it down maybe a foot under the water surface and it's on its way back up that you just get waffled. They love the look of it floating back up. And so caddis pupa as a dry and then as an egg layer.
And as a deep versatile pupa if you want to sink it too. So it's just such a versatile fly. Let me by the way, I saw someone ask John who. It's John Jurasek from West Yellowstone, Montana. John and I teach together at the School of Trout in Last Chance. We've been doing it for a number of years during the summer and fall. And we got to talking about this. And John gave me one from his box. So I'm going to show you guys what one looks like. And it's not the way that Tim and I are going to tie it.
Yeah, which is terrifying.
Yeah, but this is John's original. Here, look.
Yeah, go full screen, Tom. So
I can't.
Or
Phil,
Julia,
can you
or
go full screen?
Phil, or
Julia's
whoever.
not here. Philip, thank you. So John actually ties the bubble in the back end here and then brings it forward. Tim and I are not going to tie it that way. Because that's not the way we tie it. But you can see the whole idea is from underneath. That really gives the impression of those sprouting wing buds. And although it's a simple fly, the profile from underneath is just beautiful. And this bubble sticking up allows it to be fished as a dry fly, and it's quite visible.
Well, and it's also supposed to represent a gas bubble. Is that did he say that?
No, it's the sprouting wings and the gas bubble. But I think the main purpose is the sprouting wings. And John was actually going to be on today watching us, but he had to go to the doctor this afternoon. His back's been bothering him.
That'd have been great to have him.
Yeah,
really tell the truth about the past.
Tell us that we're doing it wrong. But now he's not here, so we can do it however.
Yeah, we can do whatever we feel like. No, but it's a very cool fly, and seeing that's awesome. I've never seen one tied like that. So
yeah, I'm going to start trying to tie. But again, we're going to tie it our own way as usual.
Yep, and
as usual,
and mine's of course has got to be just different,
Yeah, well, mine's different too. I'm sure mine will be different than yours.
I do have some pitfalls in mine though, so
pitfalls.
Yeah, there's some places where things tend to get a little ugly.
Good.
So
I can't wait to see those particular.
We'll save that for later. We're also tying on a 16 today, right, Tom?
Yeah, we're tying it on a size 16. I'm using the Orvis Tactical Dry Fly hook. It's a nice short shank, barbless light wire hook because I mainly am going to fish it as a dry, but it can be fished anyway. I actually swing this. The way I tie this one, I actually swing this one as a wet fly too. So all kinds of ways you can fish it.
Well, and I fish it because if you get it dialed up with enough floating, jam enough frog's fanny in there into the the rabbit fur dubbing or under that loop wing, you can also use it as a waking fly. Just make a little V wake across, and they love it. Certain times of the year, they just love that movement. You can dead drift it all day long. They won't touch it, and you give it just a little tug and V wake, and they clobber it.
So the answer to your question, folks, how do you fish this fly? Any damn way you please.
And kind of any time of year you please. I've caught fish on it when there aren't caddis around. And it's one of those flies where if I feel like fishing a dry fly, the Iris Caddis goes on. And it doesn't. You don't have to be full-blown caddis hatch or even anticipating one for fish to come up for it.
Nope.
Just cool.
Well, shall we start tying, Tim, or should we sit here and talk all afternoon?
Let's start tying, Tom. Why don't you start this time? I think I started first last time.
Okay, I'll start. All right. So I'm going to put that size 16 tactical dry fly hook. It has a little bit of a curved bend, so it allows you to kind of tie that shuck so that it hangs down a little bit more in the water.
You know what's funny, Tom? Is that thing that hook looks almost exactly like the Fulling Mill 50/50 that I'm going to tie it on.
Well, that's no surprise.
Do you want to tell?
Just saying.
I think they're the same hook. Okay, for the shuck, I'm going to use Z-Lon. Z-Lon is a good shuck material, and it's interesting. Yesterday, I did something that I've always been wanting to do. I took a piece of Z-Lon and I took some new material from Fulling Mill, and I took some poly yarn and I took some EP trigger point fibers, and I dunked them all in a bowl to see what would happen. And basically, they all floated. None of them sunk. They all floated. However, what I discovered is the Z-Lon doesn't float as well as the other materials because the fibers seem to stick together, and it absorbs water easier than the other materials. And so using it for a shuck to make sure that end of things kind of sinks into the water is probably a good idea. That being said, I'm not going to tie my wing out of Z-Lon, although some people do, because I don't think it floats as well. And I want something that's going to hold air bubbles and float. So I'm just going to take a piece of tan Z-Lon. You could use brown. Most of the caddis shucks I see are kind of translucent tan. I don't know about you, Tim, but
Yep.
When I see the shucks on the caddis flies, they're translucent tan. Some mayflies have a very dark brown shuck, but I haven't noticed it on caddis flies. Oh, I should start my thread, huh? I'm using 12. I'm using 12-0 brown thread. I'm going to start it up by the head, about a third of the way back. And I'm just going to figure out where I want my shuck to be. Fairly short. The caddisflies have a fairly short shuck. It's not long like a mayfly. So, right about there, like a half a shank length. And then I'm just going to bind this Z-Lon to the hook by pulling it a little bit toward me and up. And I'm going to go down around the bend a little bit so I make sure that shuck hangs down in the water. And then I'll just cut this off. And it's your turn.
Already? Wow. Gosh, gotta get my cameras on here and everything. We should really, since this is gonna be quick, should we stop and make sure we get questions asked and answered? Is that?
Yeah.
Can you do that,
Phil should be.
Yeah, and
Phil should be reading up, but I can read. Brad wants to know if there's an alternative material for Z-Lon. Yeah, you could, Brad. You could use anything. You can use poly yarn, although it's going to float a little better. You could use EP fiber. You could use macrame yarn that's been teased apart. God, there's lots of materials. What else? Antron. You could use Antron yarn. Lots and lots of different substitutes for that, but you want kind of a translucent, sparkly material for the shuck.
Yeah, there has been a lot said over the years about the magical nature of Z-Lon.
Yeah,
or I've heard it anyway, that it floats remarkably well. It has a.
It does not.
What?
It does not.
I agree with you there.
Yeah.
And so, that it comes from unicorns, all sorts of stuff. And that, that they're I don't know, it's all probably urban legend that the guys at Blue Ribbon Flies have that it was a DuPont product back in the day, and they own all of it, the straight, the crinkled, the colored, the white. And so I don't know how much of that is really true, but I really love it as a material. I think that the shimmer that it has and the translucency is something pretty unique. So
yeah,
that's just my 2 cents on it.
I don't know how much different it is than Antron. The story I heard was John Betts found it on the inside of a shoelace.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't
Did
know
you
if
ever
that's
hear that
apocryphal
Craig
or not.
Matthews bought all of it and it was in tractor trailers somewhere?
No.
That's the story I heard.
Uh,
Urban legend, I guess.
Yeah, the thing that none of us know, and I know, and Tim knows a lot of these fly material suppliers and manufacturers. I mean, we know these guys; they're friends, a lot of them, and you know what? They won't tell us what these materials are made of.
Yeah.
Even Enrico Puglisi and I are good friends. He won't tell me what trigger point is, whether it's polyester or polypropylene or acrylic, or so they're all being closed mouth about it. Nobody knows exactly what this stuff is.
Yeah. Well, and we can,
If anybody's got a spectrometer or whatever and wants to analyze all these materials, please do, so we can find out.
and I think we can also safely say that none of these materials were invented as a fly tying material.
No.
They were carpet fibers or something.
Shoelace inserts.
Yeah. And
yeah.
I know there's certain flash materials that are originally glitter before it's cut up, and so interesting stuff. Anyway, I'm gonna make sure all my cameras and everything are on. I'm gonna.
So we have a question here. Is this fly effective larger than a 16? Yeah, if you have caddis flies larger than a 16, sure.
And it also, because it's coming up soon in larger, like to 12 and even a 10, it's a demon for anything October caddis. Okay?
Except October caddis hatch outside of the water.
Right.
They crawl out of the water.
They crawl, but as a pupa swimming toward where they crawl out, it is.
Yeah.
And that's when I said I use it as a waking fly, Tom. That's exactly that's my primary place for doing it. And if it gets wet, you just swing it. You just pull it under. And yeah, look for the bump behind the fly. And that's the trout. They really hunt them down. It's very cool to watch. So I'm kind of very same hook as Tom, size 16. Little black nickel barbless falling mill 50/50, and this is actually improved micro Z-Lon. It's a little darker, kind of that this they call it mayfly brown. To me, it's like a golden brown, and it lightens up pretty good when it's sparse. And all I'm doing from this, the way a lot of the stuff is packaged, they're really very definite strands. That come off of here, so I just use that for sizing on most of them.
Yeah, me too.
And it's just easy for me to have it in plunger style hackle pliers like this. I do tie it in a little differently than Tom does. I'm going to snip the ends off square. First, I should probably get my.
You want to go?
Yep. Can you switch me? Thank you. I'm using. And this is where we could run into problems. I'm using tan UTC 70 for my thread, and so it's thin, and I'm just gonna spin my thread counterclockwise, get that stuff started on the hook shank, and kind of like Tom, I like to as much to lengthen the body a little bit as to start that down the hook shank just a little, or down the hook bend just a little ways, and then because I hoard this Z-Lon stuff. I always freaked about being able to get it. I'll put my plunger style hackle pliers on there, and again, just like Tom, fairly short little chuck, and that way I keep hold of that. And then I'm just going to advance my thread forward till it hangs about the hook point, and then you're good to go, sir.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep.
That's the way you're going to do it, huh?
That's the way I do it.
Okay. You sure? Sure you want to do it that way?
I'm positive.
Okay. All right. So the body on the version I tie, I just use Hare's here. caddis flies, for the most part, are kind of a neutral colored body. And yes, some of them have a little olive in them. Some are tan, some are dark. And I just split the difference and use Hare's there. That way I don't have to carry a bunch of different colors, and it doesn't seem to matter. If I really wanted to match something, I'd mix a little olive in here with my light Hare's ear. But for this, I just use plain old tannish brown Hare's ear. And of course, as Tim knows, this is not some prepackaged,
Of course,
prepackaged Hare's ear. It's not a, I don't use processed fur. Like, I don't eat processed food. I don't use processed fur. This is made from real Hare's ears. And I didn't show you that. I forgot to switch cameras. There's my Hare's ear. It comes in a bag that I make, and I just make my own. So there's the Hare's ear. Sorry about that. I didn't switch cameras. A lot of rabbits died to make that bag.
Rabbits or hares?
Oh yeah, hares.
Hares.
And then I'm just going to dub a short noodle on here. Not too tight. You want this body to be kind of raggedy, I think. Raggedy helps hold the floatant a little bit. And it also gives the impression of movement in the fly. So I'm just going to wind that forward. I want to put a little bit more on there, just a whisker more dubbing on there.
Oh, put a big clump on. Go for it.
No, I'm not going to do that.
Go big or go home.
I want a little bit of a taper here as I go forward. Okay. And then I like to cover the shank right up to the eye, just because when I tie in my wing, I don't want it to slip. All right.
Looks good so far. I'm digging it.
That's not where we're going to make. That's not where we're going to make the mistakes, right?
Right. This is kind of the easy part.
This is the easy part.
Because I'm busy and can't spend the time going out and shaving little rabbits, I actually use a blend, and this is Hydropsyche Tan from Blue Ribbon Flies in West Yellowstone, Montana, and it has some Z-Lon mixed in it. So I'll show you what it looks like. Hopefully on the close-up camera we'll be able to see.
So it's processed dubbing.
It's processed, but
has MSG and.
Do you see that little shimmer in there?
Sodium gluconate and
sodium Z-Lon goodness mixed in with the Hare's ear. That stuff is, I think sexy is about the only word that I can really use to describe that.
There's nothing sexier than a naked Hare's ear, Tim. I'm sorry.
Don't make me laugh. We're close up. Anyway, so I'm just going to zoom out so we can see the little dubbing. I tend to overdub the body on this, and I don't want to do that.
No, go ahead. That's okay.
And I kind of, like Tom, keep it a little loose, but it's a short dubbing noodle for me.
Yeah.
I can always add more. And nice and raggedy. It was great seeing that that fly of Mr. Jurassic's that was, that really had the raggedy in there. It was nice to see that. That's truly the way. I knew it, but truly the way the original is to be tied with. In fact, I watched a YouTube video of Craig Matthews tying an amber version of one of these, and he literally in the video said, resist all urges to trim that fuzzy stuff off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's direct quote from the video. And
Mhm.
so I don't. I'm going to leave it just like that. And you know what? Just because I'm feeling saucy today, I'm not going to take my thread out on that bear hook shank. We're going to go right just like that.
Oh boy, you are a brave.
Living on the
are-
edge.
You are a brave man. You are a brave man, Tim.
So that's, yeah, I'm going to stick with that. I'm feeling pretty good about that body.
Okay. All right. So now the wing. I'm going to tie the wing differently than Tim, I guarantee you. Absolutely. There's no way Tim's going to tie it like this. So I recently got a new material from Fulling Mill, and I think it's barely on the market and may not be on the market. It's called Ultra Dry yarn, and this was in my test of floating qualities. What I did was I put the yarns in, and I just threw them in to see, how they'd absorb water and whatever. And then I took each strand out and I would flick it a couple times like it was a false cast, and I would put it back in the water. And this and EP Trigger Point floated the best, and I think this has a slight edge. And I think the reason is that this stuff has a pretty good kink in it. And anytime you have kinks in your hair, that just gives you additional places to hold air bubbles and to get support for the fly in the film. So I know it's probably pretty hard to see it there, but it's a wonderful material for wings on chubby Chernobyls and posts and all that stuff. It's brand new. Orvis is going to sell it. We don't have it yet. I don't even think you can get it anywhere yet. But anyway, it's a great material. It comes in a wide variety of colors.
And it looks like a fairly large hank, right? Right, Tom?
Yeah.
Like you get a lot of material for the money.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Now you see how it springs apart? That's going to aid
Tom?
in the flotation. Yeah.
I just wanted to let folks in Europe can get it. I just checked. Fulling Mill UK has it, and they've announced it for US, but it's not available yet.
Yeah. Yep. But anyway, you could use EP Trigger Point. You could use poly yarn for this. You can use Z-Lon if you want for the wing. However, as I discovered, Z-Lon doesn't float or shake off water as well as the other materials. And surprisingly, polypropylene yarn itself from a card was not that good.
Well, can we talk about that for a second, Tom? Because I get this question a lot, and I just did one on macrame yarn, which is essentially polypropylene.
Right, correct.
Sometimes it's just a polypropylene core. There's something on the outside. Anyway, and I did a little float test, compared regular polypro to macrame yarn. And I think you kind of hit on it. What is important is the just the overall physical structure of the fibers. It's not like they're hollow. It's how kinky they are or how fine they are.
Yep.
The other thing that you kind of have to take into account is that some fibers are treated with things like watershed, and so they're hydrophobic to begin with. They've been soaked in a solution that makes them shed water, so they can't absorb water, I guess, and so that adds some float to them as well. And I don't worry too much about the pre-treated fibers, because after a couple fish, it's going to come off. It's gone. But
I have fly floating too.
Yeah,
I use fly floating.
In doing the water test for me, I do have some that were pre-treated with, specifically with watershed, and they really float. I mean, initially anyway, as compared to polypro or the macrame yarn. I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm pretty sure it's the same stuff. It's polypropylene. It's just been treated with something that's hydrophobic.
Yeah. could be.
Several folks have asked if CDC would work.
Sorta.
Sorta, yeah. But the problem with CDC is that you have to be so careful of what you treat it with once it gets wet and you want it to float again. And it does have some kind of unique that physical qualities. The little spikies that stick out, they tend to trap air bubbles. And yeah, but then you're very limited in terms of the floatant that you can use once that gets wet or gets slimy to get it back up and floating.
Yeah. This stuff you can use any kind of floatant your little heart desires. All right, so I'm gonna cut this in half because I'm gonna double it over. You want a pretty big bubble on this, so I'm gonna use a double strand of this, and then
Oh no!
What?
Nothing.
For a little extra sparkle, I'm gonna put some Pearl Midge Crystal Flash in there.
Oh, you're lucky Mr. Jurassic isn't on this call.
I know.
Man.
John would approve. He believes in innovating. So I'm going to lay this in between the two strands and kind of mix it up a little bit here. There's two reasons that I put the Crystal Flash in there. One is that it adds a little sparkle to this. And the other reason is that because it attracts light in all different directions, I find that it really helps it show up on the water better. And then I'm going to give this a little twist and then just a little bit more, and just then let it double over and loop on itself and then grab that loop. That I find that's the easiest way to get that loop. So now I've got my loop for the iris part, and I don't like the way that folded, so I'm going to try it again. I don't like the way that folded either.
Take your time, Tom.
Better. Yeah. That's better. So there's my bubble.
We got all day.
We do. And then I'm going to put the bubble on the top. And you want it to stick out on the side. You want it to be about a shank length long, but you actually want it to stick out on the side so that the fish can see it from underneath. So it needs to be fairly wide. And then I'm going to secure this really well. Adjust it, make sure it's where you want it. And come in and trim it off. Ugh. Flagler's waiting for me to cut my thread, I know. And then really secure those butts down. Go all the way to the eye and come back. So now I've got that big bubble.
That is a big bubble.
You want a big bubble. You know, you could almost use this as an attractor fly because it's got so much visibility. I'm going to tweak that exposure a little bit. There. It was kind of hot on the wing. Okay, your turn. I'm sure you're going to do it differently.
Totally differently.
You see what Phil wrote?
What? No.
Tom likes big bubbles and he cannot lie.
Very good, Phil. Very good. Okay, so yeah, even though Tom insisted it doesn't float, I am going to use Z-Lon. This is just a white Z-Lon, and I keep it in one of these boba tea straws. Works great. And I've already got a strand. It's sort of stranded, And I'm just using a single strand as opposed to a huge clump or 2 strands.
Of course you are.
And what, ooh, I gotta zoom in. And I don't know. I've seen a lot of people do this different ways. I'm just going to snip off. I don't want to waste this stuff. I just want a little square end on there. I'm going to give my bobbin a nice big old counterclockwise spin. The thread should jump rearward and catch that. And I don't know whether this is legal or not. I just fold it back, make it about a shank length, and don't try to loop it in my hands or add crystal flash to it or
that's
anything.
the beginner way.
This is the way newbie tires do it, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to do the same thing again. I don't like the term hoarder, but I really don't like wasting a millimeter of this stuff.
I'm very wasteful.
And so I got that little bubble thing, little loop, if you will. Same thing,
Nice
looks
bubble.
like nice bubble underneath. And I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. And that's, to me, that's pretty darn good.
It looks good.
It's supposed to look rough and ready, I guess, is
right.
It is not a clean looking fly by any stretch, and it's good for me anyway. It's going to get a lot worse, guys. What I do next, you'll see.
Well,
we'll see what Tom does, but
I'm in the same boat as you. Yeah.
Okay. The
so
worse.
I have tried. The head on this thing is a little hair fur. It doesn't look like John puts any head on his at all.
I know. What's up with that?
That's the way he ties them.
I
like a simulation of legs on this, and I think it helps it float. But I make my legs even a little more robust, and I tie I actually spin a dubbing loop, which I don't like to do that much, but I found that using a dubbing loop with pine squirrel makes a nice head on this, and it gives me a collar so that I can swing this fly if I want to. It aids in flotation because it holds floating, and it's got little fibers. And I believe that for some reason, flies don't swing that well unless they have a collar. I'm not sure why. I've always discovered that a plain old nymph swung doesn't work as well as a soft hackle swung or something with a full collar of hackle. So anyway, without any more.
Yeah, I'm going to settle in and have a little yerba mate here because this ought to be good.
Yeah, sure, it's yerba mate. All right, so I am going to grab a piece of micro pine squirrel.
How bold.
Yeah, I'm going for it, Flagler. I'm going for it.
You really are.
And I'm going to actually going to get rid of those first few fibers there because I don't like them. I'm going to stroke it away from so that it sticks out 90 degrees. And you don't need much here. I'm going to take my handy dandy hairline material clamp, which I really like, and grab a fairly small amount of this.
Hold on. You're giving me grief about all the tools I use, and
I don't have any plunger style hackle pliers.
Yeah, deep cleansing breath, Tim.
Okay, so I've got a small amount of stuff there from the micropine squirrel. And then I'm going to go over to my fly, and I'm going to form a dubbing loop. Not a very long one. And I'm going to lock that loop in by going around it a couple times. And then, oh, I need some wax. I need just a little bit of wax. So I'm going to let that hang for a minute. I got to go over to my tying table and get my wax. All right. So I'm going to open up that dubbing loop. Just a little bit. You don't need a lot of wax on this. You don't want it. And then I'm going to insert that fur. This is always the tricky part. In there. I'd like to move it up a little bit. Yeah, I can do that. And then I'm going to spin this. Just so you can see the spun stuff there. And then I like to pick, if I see any really long hairs, I like to pick them out. Because I don't want this terribly long. I'll pick them out. And then I'm going to take a couple of the turns of the bare doubled thread. And when I get close to the shank, I'm going to stroke this fur back and just take a couple turns with it, trying to keep it pointed back. And then tie that off. It's a little heavier than I'd like it, but we'll call this a fast water Iris Caddis. And then stroke it back again. Form a little head and push any of those fibers back that might be sticking forward. And then if you're careful, you can very carefully just brush this out a little bit. You don't want to catch your wing. So definitely does not look like John's fly.
No.
But it's worked for me. A couple of fuzzies there. A couple of long guard hair here. Okay.
We good?
Yeah.
That looks pretty cool. I gotta admit. I wish it didn't, but dang it.
Well, sorry. I'm sure yours is going to look even cooler.
Wow. I don't know. Okay, I just gotta let my cameras get warmed up here, guys.
And there's a question: that collar seems aggressive. Wouldn't CDC work for legs? Yes, you could use CDC. Sure, you could.
All right. So I'm going to use the same dubbing for my collar, I guess we'll call it, or a thorax, depending on how you look at it. And so this is that stuff with that little Z-Lon mix in it, and you don't need much. In fact, I can tell that's too much. And again, I don't like to waste this stuff, so I'm going to put it in the pack. And what I'm doing here is, like in textiles, it's called carding, and you're just pulling the clump apart and trying to get the fibers somewhat aligned. And I'm going to make a little slip like that. That's all it is. You can see that. And I'm going to just set it on my tying vise kind of at the ready, because I'm going to have my hands sort of full for the next step. When I learned to tie this, I'm going to mess up my fingers by doing this. again, it was Matt Grobert, and he touch dubs, uses this high-tax wax, but you can probably tell by my high-tax wax that it's messy business. And it works really well if you learn how to touch dub. It's a cool technique, but it's kind of messy. And so I'm going to make a dubbing loop, but it's not really a dubbing loop. We're going to do split thread dubbing. And this is where I run into problems. And
Good.
it's that this is, I mean, this is 70 dene, or however you say it. I always say it incorrectly and get corrected for it. So it is not easy to split. I'm using my bodkin to floss it out, and I don't need to split it too far down here, but real fine dubbing needle. Doesn't have to be exactly halfway, but just enough to get that opened up. And that way I can take that little slip of dubbing and just shove it in there like that. And just like Tom did, I'm gonna spin my bobbin clockwise as if I'm looking down on it. And that's going to eventually spin this up into just a fuzzy little rope, a really cool looking fuzzy little rope. Now, one of the things that I found is that if it's not spun up too much, you can actually kind of slide it up a little bit so you don't have so much thread up there that you're winding. And I pretty much do the same thing that Tom just did. A lot of this is going to come out in the tying process, and a lot of it is going to come out when you first go to fish it. But that's kind of the part of the deal with this fly, and it just makes this fuzzy, bushy little thorax, hopefully with a few guard hairs in there that are representing legs or antennae or whatever it is. And then just I'm going to give my bobbin a counterclockwise spin. I really spun that thread up in putting that dubbing in there, and I don't want that spun up thread to mess up my whip finish here. I don't want to cause a knot. And so just a little, 4 or 5 turn back to front whip finish. Seat that in there really well, and then I just snip my tying or cut my tying thread free like that. And that's all I do. And again, to me, resist the urge to trim any of this stuff out. You want it to be buggy and nasty like that. And let me zoom in if I can. And so it's just
an emerging caddis is a pretty messy looking critter anyway.
Yeah, it is. I mean, they're kind of hideous, to be kind. They're almost alien looking, and with antennas swept back, and they kind of undulate. I don't know if you've ever seen them in the Surface film. Their abdomen just does this weird rhythmic thing, and yeah, they're strange critters. And so that
Ed, you could use an India hen feather for the collar, but you'd have to find an awful small one. I don't know if you could find one small enough.
Yeah.
But I mean, any old dubbing, Ed, will work better than probably trying to tie a feather in there.
Yeah, and I generally like if I had a few more guard hairs in there, that little wad of dubbing didn't have a lot of guard hairs. I'd prefer a few more guard hairs, long pointy ones. But yeah, that's kind of right on the money for me, the way I like them tied.
Okay, I'm putting the link to the voting in the chat right now.
Okay, just prop my wing up a little bit. This one should be interesting, Tom. Because these are kind of different flies.
Yeah,
because,
there.
because of the collar. They're
Yeah.
Um,
If I was going to do this one over, I would make that collar sparser.
seeing if I was going to do this one over, I'd make my collar like I was saying, a few more guard hairs in there would look good. And I grabbed a guard hair free little wad of dubbing there.
Well, there's plenty of guard hairs in this one.
Yeah.
Do you want to borrow some guard hairs? I got extras.
Hand them to me. But bottom line, an absolute genius pattern as far as I'm concerned. I mean, really one of more. I'm going to say inspired patterns. You know, because it's not like other flies. You know, it's really is very different than other caddis imitations, and yeah. What do you think about the not actual movement, but the illusion of movement with, you know, different colored hair, guard hairs, and things like that, and all the fuzzy stuff? To me,
yeah, I think that, you know, caddis legs are always moving; they're paddling around, and so that's why I like this fuzzy fur collar, because there's a lot going on up there in the front of the caddis.
Okay, folks. 30 seconds and we're going to call it. 30 seconds to vote. Click the link that's in the chat.
Spin faster, Tim.
Okay, just got a little loop. Look at the bottom. Oh. I'm gonna. There we go.
All right,
that really just took it to the next level right there, I think.
I'm tired of spinning.
I don't head cement these, by the way, guys, just FYI. The head cement for me anyway, tends to go back into the dubbing, and I don't like it. So I just leave them au naturel. Did everybody leave?
No, they're voting.
They're voting out.
I wasn't able to get our link on our YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you're not getting those.
So
yeah, there seems to be a problem with the link on YouTube. But I don't think it matters.
That's either really good or really bad.
Yeah.
Now I'm nervous.
Okay. The winner is, drum roll, Tim.
Yes.
Congratulations once again, Tim.
Thank you, Tom. I think the reason I may have won was sticking more to the traditional.
Yeah, probably.
As opposed to.
Well, it's a good looking fly. It's a really good looking fly.
But I like your idea. I like the heavier collar with the longer legs on it with the squirrel. Particularly for if I was waking that thing.
Yeah.
Like I'm watching you do it. I'm thinking I have some pine squirrel that's like burnt orange. And put that in a collar for the October caddis would just be, oof, really good.
Okay, a couple of questions. You answered some of these before, but right at the beginning. Do you prefer the Iris Caddis over plain CDC elk Hare caddis for your go-to caddis fly?
You want to go with that one, Tom, or?
I don't have a go-to caddisfly. I mean, I try different things, and generally the one I try first is the one that's in the top of the pile in my box. So I'll tell you what my go-to wouldn't be, and that's a standard elk hair caddis, because I think that floats too high and I don't like it. So CDC and elk, I have a pattern called the Ek caddis that uses CDC, and rabbit's foot that I use a lot. I use this fly. So it's gonna vary.
Well, and for me, it's a really legitimate question, because I'm one of two caddis. For pupa and things like that, it's a little different. But for like surface caddis, I am this one, the Iris Caddis, and Hans Weilenmann CDC and elk, and that's pretty much it. I really don't. I know I've tied a lot of different caddis on video, but those are the two that I just have boxes and boxes of, and use them all the time. And so. You hear that?
You all right?
We're having an audio problem, Tom. I don't know whether you can still hear me or not.
Yeah, I can hear you.
It sounds pretty bad from our end.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's coming from you or from us, Tom.
What are you getting? Feedback or something? I mean,
Yeah,
Is that us or?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely Tom.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've muted him for our safety.
For our, our listening and viewing pleasure.
Yeah, Tom. Sorry.
Yeah.
you still hear it?
Yeah.
Very bad.
What does it sound like?
It sounds like someone's tuning a radio back and forth really fast.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like alien invasion or something.
Anyway, I will take this time to remind everybody that John Jurasek's name is pronounced Jurasek, not Jurassic, like the time of the dinosaurs. But other than that, Tom, can you go and give it one more shot, or should we call it?
Shout.
Sorry, Tom.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Tim.
Thank you, Phil.
And thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
And thanks, everybody.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate it.
We'll see you next week.
Yep. Get out in the water.